My ex-girlfriend cheated on me, left me for her true love, promised him I'd keep paying all her bills, then he threatened my business and got caught red-handed trying to vandalize my restaurant at midnight. My name is Jack Pierce. I'm 29 years old, and I own a burger joint that I built from the ground up. It's not some high-end place with fancy decor or overpriced menus, but it's mine. Every inch of it represents years of grinding, long shifts in other people's kitchens, saving every rupee I could, and refusing to quit when things got hard. Over time, the place took off. I built a loyal customer base, became somewhat of a local favorite, and for the first time in my life, I felt stable. I bought myself a car, got a modest but comfortable house, and settled into a routine that made me proud. I wasn't really looking for love when I met Brandy. It just happened. I remember the first time she walked into my restaurant like it was yesterday. It was a hectic Friday afternoon, the kind where the line stretches out the door and everyone's running on adrenaline. I was helping at the register because we were short-staffed. She stepped up, smiled shyly, and ordered. There was something about her, something in her eyes, that caught my attention. When she found out I owned the place, she seemed genuinely impressed. We talked a little longer than necessary, and somehow, that turned into us going out. At first, everything felt right. She was affectionate, attentive, and made me feel like I mattered. We became official within a few months, and I genuinely believed I had found something real. I started picturing a future, marriage, maybe even a family someday. I included her in my plans without hesitation. But slowly, cracks started to show. Brandy was extremely jealous. At first, I brushed it off as her caring too much. If I spoke to a female customer, even just doing my job, she'd get upset. If someone commented on the restaurant's social media, she'd question who it was and why they were interacting with me. I convinced myself it was harmless, even flattering in a strange way. That was my first mistake. Over time, her behavior got worse. Her moods would swing unpredictably. One moment she'd tell me I was everything to her, and the next she'd pick fights over nothing. I kept making excuses for her, telling myself she had insecurities, maybe a rough past. I thought if I loved her enough, things would balance out. I was wrong. A few months ago, everything shifted. She became distant, cold, like she was mentally somewhere else. When I asked what was wrong, she'd brush it off: stress, work, personal stuff. I didn't push too hard, but something in my gut told me something wasn't right. Then one day, her phone lit up while she was in the bathroom. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the message popped up clearly: "See you tomorrow. I can't stop thinking about you." That feeling, it was like my chest caved in. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed to be sure. The next morning, I followed her. I'm not proud of it, but I had to know. She said she was visiting a friend. Instead, she drove to a cafe parking lot. I watched from a distance as a man approached her. It took me a second to recognize him. Her ex. They hugged like they hadn't been apart at all. The kind of hug that tells you everything you don't want to know. I didn't confront them. I didn't have it in me. I just sat there, feeling everything collapse inside me, and then I drove away. That night, I told her I knew. She denied it at first. Then she broke. Through tears, she admitted everything, not just the cheating, but something worse. She said he was the love of her life, that she never stopped loving him. In that moment, something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. Everything we had for 3 years suddenly felt like a lie. I wasn't her partner. I was her backup plan. We ended things. What made it worse was everything I had done for her financially. I had taken care of most of our expenses: rent, trips, daily costs. I didn't mind at the time. I thought that's what you do when you love someone. One of the biggest things was her car loan. She had been struggling with it, so I stepped in and started paying it monthly. I never thought the decision would come back to haunt me. A few weeks after the breakup, she called. I almost didn't answer, but I assumed it was about her belongings or something practical. Instead, she said casually, "You haven't paid the car installment yet. You should do it soon before interest builds up." I honestly thought she was joking. When I realized she wasn't, something inside me burned. I told her straight, calm at first, then not so much, that we were done. She cheated on me. She chose someone else. I owed her nothing. That car was hers, not mine. I hung up, thinking that was the end of it. It wasn't. She started calling nonstop, messaging from different numbers when I blocked her, guilt-tripping me, saying I needed to be a man and honor my commitments. Then, unbelievably, her ex, Alexander, called me. I picked up just to end it. He actually tried to lecture me, told me that since she gave me 3 years of her life, I owed her compensation. that I should pay her rent and the car loan for at least a year. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I lost it. I told him exactly what I thought, that I had already given her everything: stability, support, financial help. That she was the one who betrayed me. And if he was so concerned about her, maybe he should step up instead of expecting me to keep funding her life. I called him what he was, a freeloader hiding behind someone else's effort, and then I hung up. After that, the messages kept coming. Manipulation, guilt, emotional pressure. But by then, something had changed in me. I was done. Done being used. Done confusing love with sacrifice. Done letting people treat me like an endless resource instead of a human being. So I cut her off completely. Blocked her everywhere. Told my staff not to let her into the restaurant if she showed up. Not out of spite, but because I needed to protect my peace and the life I had worked so hard to build. And sometimes, walking away isn't just the right choice. It's the only one. I truly believed I had closed that chapter of my life. After everything that happened, I blocked Elena everywhere, set firm boundaries, and focused on my work and my peace of mind. For a few weeks, things were quiet, and I finally felt like I was moving on. Then one day, my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered out of habit, and the moment I heard her voice, I felt immediate exhaustion. Elena was crying, begging me not to hang up, and quickly got to the point. She needed money for the car payment. She said the loan was about to default, that fees were piling up, and she couldn't handle it alone. What I felt wasn't sympathy. It was disbelief. Even after everything, the cheating, the breakup, the truth she admitted, she still expected me to take responsibility for her life. I made it clear, once again, that the car was hers, the debt was hers, and I wasn't paying anything. Then she said something that made it all worse. Through tears, she admitted she had already promised Julian that I would cover everything. She told him not to worry because I had money, because I was rich, and because I had always taken care of her. That's when I realized this wasn't just desperation, it was entitlement. The situation escalated when Julian took the phone. His tone was cold and threatening. He implied that if I didn't cooperate, something could happen to my restaurant. For a moment, I felt a chill, but it quickly turned into anger. That business represents years of sacrifice, and no one was going to intimidate me into funding their lives. I made it clear that any attempt to harm my restaurant would have legal consequences, and I ended the call. Soon after, Elena sent a voice message, crying even harder. She said she couldn't handle things alone, and admitted she was afraid Julian would leave her if I didn't help. That was the moment everything became clear. It was never about love, it was about dependence. She just needed someone to carry her, whether it was me or him. Instead of anger, I felt detachment. I responded with a bit of irony, sending a message that reflected how absurd the situation had become. For the first time, I felt a sense of closure. But I also knew I couldn't ignore the threat. The next day, I went to my lawyer and showed him everything: calls, messages, recordings. He didn't hesitate to call it what it was: extortion. I filed a police report, started the process for legal protection, and took steps to secure my restaurant. At the same time, I took additional precautions. I hired a private security service for the restaurant, installed more cameras, reinforced entry points, and informed my staff of the situation. As expected, the messages didn't stop immediately. Another attempt at blackmail came from a different number, repeating the same demands and threats. But instead of affecting me, it only strengthened my case. Every message they sent became another piece of evidence against them. I won't deny that all of this affected me. It's not easy to accept that someone you trusted could not only betray you but continue trying to use you afterward. But more than the betrayal, what stayed with me was their mindset. The belief that I owed something simply because I once cared. That's something I no longer accept. Today, I feel stronger and more grounded. I understand now that boundaries aren't selfish, they're necessary. While I focus on growing my business and moving forward, they remain stuck, looking for someone else to depend on. Update. As I mentioned before, I had already taken legal action against Brandy and Alexander. The police report was filed, security at my restaurant had been reinforced, and I was doing my best to move forward. Still, there was a lingering unease in the back of my mind, the question of whether Alexander would actually act on his threats. That answer came one night. It was a Thursday just after midnight. The restaurant was closed, but I always had a security guard on duty. I was at home, resting after a long day, when my phone rang. It was the guard. His voice was shaky as he told me they had caught a man trying to spray paint the front walls of the restaurant. I was on my feet instantly. He explained that he had seen the man in the act, shouted at him to stop, and the guy tried to run. The police had already been called and arrived quickly, chasing him down a few streets before catching him. When I asked who it was, I already knew the answer before he said it. Alexander. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. After weeks of threats, he had actually followed through with a spray can in his hand. I rushed to the restaurant. When I arrived, the police were still there. They confirmed everything. Alexander had been caught red-handed, paint on his hands, trying to vandalize the place. When confronted, he had been shouting nonsense about destroying my business if I didn't pay him. That night, I went to the station to give a full statement. There was already a case against him for threats and attempted extortion, and now attempted vandalism was added. At that point, it wasn't even complicated anymore. The evidence spoke for itself. The following days were stressful, but straightforward. My lawyer kept me updated. Between the call logs, messages, voice recordings, and now being caught in the act, there was no room for doubt. Alexander was charged and eventually convicted. The sentence wasn't long, but it was enough to leave him with a criminal record and a hard lesson about consequences. Brandy, on the other hand, tried to reach me through mutual acquaintances. She asked me to reconsider, to drop the charges, claiming Alexander acted out of desperation. Some people even suggested I was overreacting and should let it go. I didn't. I had already tolerated betrayal, manipulation, and threats. This crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. Letting it slide would have meant accepting that my work, my livelihood, and my safety were things others could gamble with. Toward the end, Brandy made one last attempt to reach me. She sent a long message from an unknown number, talking about being alone, about needing support, about how she would fall apart if Alexander went to prison. I read it once, then deleted it without responding. At that point, she was no longer part of my life. Looking back now, I feel relief more than anything else. For months, I had been trapped in a cycle where my generosity was mistaken for obligation, where my effort was treated like a resource to exploit. I thought I was helping someone who needed me, but in reality, I was enabling dependence. The restaurant is still standing, stronger than ever. If anything, the situation brought me more support. Customers respected that I didn't back down. And for me, the lesson is clear. Not everyone deserves your help. Love is not a reason to sacrifice your dignity. And anything built with hard work is worth protecting, without fear, without compromise. Alexander faced the consequences of his actions. Brandy chose her path, and I chose mine. I walked away with my business, my peace, and the clarity to never let something like this happen again. Since you got this far, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button. Also, you love stories like these, visit my channel once, and I promise you won't get disappointed. Have a great day.